Next, we will continue with understanding what is calculated column, calculated measure, calculated table in DAX. This is the fundamental building block as part of DAX. You should be aware of it. The calculated column. What is a calculated column? Calculated column is an extension of your existing table. Supposing you want to create additional column, new column, besides the existing columns in your table. Okay, in addition to your existing table columns, you want to create additional columns. For example, you want to create a new column by the name of net revenue and profit margin, and so on. If you want to create any additional column based on the existing columns or based on some business logic, then we will go with creating additional column. That is called your calculated column. Okay, the calculated columns live in your X velocity in memory storage of your Power BI. Okay, just like all other data you import from data source, the calculated column data will also get loaded in your memory. Okay, the calculated column is virtually same as your non-calculated column with one exception. Okay, so the calculated column, the values in your calculated columns, right? So it will get evaluated, it will get computed at the time of refresh, data refresh. Okay, that is the difference. And other differences, the calculated columns, right, will be derived from the other columns. Don't worry, I will explain one by one, right? So one by one, don't worry. So calculated column is a new column created from two or more existing columns. The next one is it is calculated row by row in a table. So hence it uses row context. In the interview, they ask you what is row context. So in the case of calculated column, it uses row context. You can tell them upfront. Okay. And the next one is it is calculated. A calculated column is often used as an intermediate step to obtain a final result. Okay, so this is also one of the reasons why we create the calculator. Because sometimes what will happen is you cannot derive the value upfront. You need to have some intermediate step. Okay, and then temporarily you need to store the data somewhere. And on top of the temporarily stored data, you need to perform additional transformation or something like that. Okay, so in that kind of situation, you can go for calculated column. The calculated column is calculated at the time of refreshing your memory. And also it will not get recalculated whenever the filter or slicer changes on your dashboard or report. It is basically pre-calculated and stored in your table. Okay, now what we will do is we will go step one, right? The first bullet point, and then we will take a look at, right? We will create one calculated column. With that, you should be able to understand, right, what exactly the calculated column is. The calculated column is a new column created from two or more existing columns. In the past session, I hope you all remember we have created a couple of columns in addition to the existing columns in a table. Here, what I do is look at this data set. Here, all the columns you are already familiar until this one. One second, let me just go here. Okay, what I do is in this case, I just rename this as, if I type it from the scratch, you should be able to understand. So anyhow, wherever it is required, right, I will try to avoid typing the script again. If I do it, it'll take time. I just close this here. Okay. This is the data set given to us. Okay. And up to sales amount. Okay. The rest of the columns, I created it for the demo purpose. Up to sales amount, we have the data with you. So now what management says is, so you can give discount based on some condition. Okay. Based on some business rule, we can give certain percentage of discount to the specific set of transactions. So the rule here is, if the sales amount, those customers purchased more than the sales value, right? Those customers spent more than 90 and less than 400, they are eligible for 3% discount. And those people, they purchased more than $400 or 400 rupees, they are eligible for 4% discount, 3%, 4%. Okay. So what I do is I just click on the new column. In the last session, we have seen how to use switch function. Today session, I will intentionally use if function because you should be knowing if also. If is also a logical function. Discount. I just create a column called discount here. I just use if function. There is something called if function. The first argument is a logical test. Okay. And then the second argument is result if true and else false. So here we are checking the condition. If the condition is true, return this value. If the condition is false, then you can return this value. Okay, either you return or this value, but if the only if the condition is true, whatever the condition, for example, if the customer age is greater than or less than 25, then you put age group is between 20 to 25, something like that. Else you put their age as it is. Again, you can use you can write nested if statement. In this session, I'll show you how to write nested if. With this example, I'll show you how to write a nested if statement. So now what I do is I just pressed, I was holding my Alt key and then pressed enter so that it took me to the second line. I just use the tab and just moving here. So you can write it everything in a single line. End of the day, your code should be readable. This is one of the best practice. See, Americans, once you submit your code, right, they will check all these things, including how tidy your code. Okay. So this one, whether it is readable or not. Okay, those kind of handle, they'll check it. Okay, so now what I do is I just go and type the sales fact table. In this case, I just take the sales amount, and what I do is more than 90. If the sales amount is more than 90, and if the sales amount is less than 400, I want to define the range here. So in this case, what I do is I just use and here, and is nothing but double ampersand. Sales fact, in this case, the same thing, the sales amount and less than 400, comma, I'm holding the Alt key and I'm going to press enter. So I just say the sales amount, the sales fact, sales amount, multiply the sales amount by 0.03, something like that. If this condition is true for those records falls within this range, right? Those records have sales amount more than 90 and less than 400. For those records, you multiply the sales amount by 0.03, which is nothing but 3%. So we can give 3% discount to these customers, those purchased between these two ranges. All right, so next one is, okay, those customers purchased 400 and above, I want to give 4% discount. How can I do that? So here, if the condition is true, do this. Okay, otherwise, do something else. Okay, here I can say the simply sales fact, sales amount. I just do this one, sales amount. Look here, we will go step by step. I just do this one. Okay, so here what I tell Power BI, so in this case, what I tell him, right? So any value between these two, you give them 3%. Otherwise, don't give anything. Okay. Otherwise, okay, what I do is, otherwise you say 0. Okay, don't give any discount, right? The condition is true, do this. Otherwise, do this. The condition is true, do this one, else it is. Got it? I just click on the tick mark here, and let's see what happens here. So the I know we have a mix of the hands-on people and non-programming background people. Please bear with me, right? So look here. Here I can see that based on this condition, I can see the sales amount is greater than 90. Hence, so it multiplied this one with 0.03. So obviously you get 3 here. The discount is 3 here. And this guy 200, it gives 6 here. Why it is 6 here? And here, yeah, so because 200 into 0.03 is 6. But if you see few records here, 0 here. And if you go and check here, the sales amount is 144, more than 400. Right? So more than, so anything more 400, anything 400 and above, put it 0. That's what I mentioned it. If the condition fails, you put 0 here. Because I want to check only, for this condition. Let's say as a manager, you are telling me, no, we need to give more discount to those customers by 400 and above. Okay, so how much? 0.04. Now what I do is I just expand this one. And here what I do is, this is else part, right? This is your, if the condition is true, do this. Else, this is else part. Your if else, you must be knowing the if else construct, right? This is your else part. In the else part, I'm going to use another if. Since I'm using another if here, this is called your nested if. So one if inside another if. This is called your, instead you can use the switch function. Since I want you to be familiar with the if function, I just use this one, okay? 400, if anything more than 400. Here I can see something wrong here. The sales fact, if sales fact. Okay, what I do is I just press enter. I just bring it to the next line. And then see, when you bring it to the next line, you will get to know where you made a mistake. You have a closed parenthesis here, but you don't have the open parenthesis here. Now you understood, right? The benefit of writing your script in a more readable format. I did not write this, in the, just next to the if, right? I just pressed enter and then I realized, okay, there is, there is a closed parenthesis here. There is no corresponding open parenthesis. Now I'm able to fix that error. The next line, what I do is pretty straightforward. I just go and copy paste this one. We want to give 0.04 thing, and then I just hold the alt and press enter, and I just put the sales amount is something. Okay, here I did not put comma here. So if you don't put comma here, what happens here? This one got highlighted. That means there is syntax error. If you need to go up and see, okay, here I put comma here. If the condition is true, comma, you do this. Else you do this. How the Power BI will get to know? With the help of the comma. Each, the thing is, the statement should get terminated with comma, but the last one you don't have to terminate with comma here. Okay. Now that's it. I just press alt enter and I just go here and close this with the open parenthesis. Always it is good idea. So here I don't need this parenthesis. See here I put mistakenly additional parenthesis. If this condition is true, give 3% discount. Okay. If the sales amount is 400 and above, then you give this discount. So look here, I have another thing here unnecessarily. Okay, you can use the open parenthesis, because here you can use the parenthesis for this, but make sure that you are using the closed parenthesis at the appropriate line. So in this case, I did not specify the closure. So whenever you select, when you keep the cursor here, the corresponding thing will get highlighted here. Okay, and this closed parenthesis, the corresponding open parenthesis one. Okay, everything is fine. And if I click on this here, this one is related to this one. Okay, and what about this one? Right, for this one we need to have one more parenthesis, closed parenthesis. So now you see here, the moment when I type this one is for this and this one is for this. And if I say this one, click on the tick mark, let's see what happens. Good, no error. It's working fine. I just click on the, sorry, I just minimize this. Look here, to minimize this, click on the up arrow. It'll get minimized. Let's go and check. Yes, perfect. Wherever we replace 0, right? Now we are getting this one. So I just randomly check the value here, 1440. It is above 400, 57.6, right? So 1440 into 4, if you multiply, how much? Yeah, almost 576. Since we have The here two decimal, right? So 57.6 we are getting it. Correct. This is a calculated column. In this calculated column, we have used this simple if condition. Okay. If is a logical function. Switch is also a logical function. You remember we discussed about logical operator and the logical function. The switch is also a logical function. If is also a logical function. You can alternatively, you can use switch function whenever you end up having multiple if conditions, right? Or nested if. In that kind of situation, you can use switch function. Switch is pretty simple, but you can, for you to understand, right? So here in this case, we have only one nested if condition is there. Hence, I did not use switch here. It is up to you, okay? But end of the day, we are getting the correct output here. Fine. Now I have created a calculated column. I just go back here and see a calculated column is a new column created from two or more existing columns. So this one I created based on the existing column. Sales amount is already there. Look here. Based on this, I applied the link. In this case, I've used only one column, not necessarily two or more columns. Okay, based on the existing column, you can apply your business logic. This is the business logic or business rule. With that, you are able to create this one. This business logic is given by your customer. Okay, they will, as part of the design document, you can find this. And if you don't find anything, you need to ask them. Okay, why? In case of any discrepancy with this one condition, also you can validate with them. Fine. What is the next point here? It is calculated row by row in the data table. So what happens? These conditions are validate against each and every row. It goes to the first row and then checks whether the sales amount is falling in this range. Yes. Then it computes it multiplies this one with 0.003. So this is how you arrive the discount for this sales amount. For this also you arrive this one. And for 1440, this condition fails because 1440 sales amount is not falling in this range. What happens is obviously the control will be sent to else part. This is your condition. The condition is to do this. This is your else. Instead of else, we have used another if. Here the control will come here. It comes and checks here. 1440 is obviously greater than this one. And hence what it does is it multiplies this records value 1440 by 0.04, and then it gives us it returns this value. So row by row it applies this condition. It computes the discount value. In this case, row by row operation, anything related to calculated column, you can tell them upfront. In the case of calculated column, it does the row by row operation. In the case of calculated column, we use the existing columns to existing column, or based on some business logic, we will be creating a new column or deriving a new column. The next one is the calculated column is often used as an intermediate step to obtain final result. Sometimes we use this one. For example, I just show you here in this case intermediate step. So here I have, thank God, I have both the list price as well as the cost price that is available here. I want to create something like a new column by the name of cost of goods sold. I just click on the new columns. Guys, please remember currently I'm in data view. I selected the appropriate table sales fact. Okay. And you just make sure that, okay, don't go and create unnecessarily in some other table. Okay. In the real time scenario, you'll be working with more than one table. Okay. Here I just click on the new column. Here what I do is I just create a new column by the name of cost of goods sold, and here what I do is some sales fact, the cost price into the sales fact or sales amount. Okay, this is my cost of goods sold. If I subtract the cost of goods sold from my sales value, I'll get the profit. So this is a temporary step, intermediate step. That is what I meant here. A calculated column is often used as an intermediate. In this scenario, I wanted to have this column separately. So what is the mistake here? Here the cost price into, okay, what is the problem here? cannot convert value $40 type text to. Look here, error. There is nothing wrong with the syntax, but here 400 rupee of type text to type number, right? Somewhere some text value is there. I think something wrong with the cost price, because earlier we were able to do some kind of arithmetic operation, the sales amount. If this was a text data type, it would have thrown an error that time itself. There is nothing wrong with this, something wrong with the cost price. So you should be very good at the troubleshooting part. If you get some error like this, you need to read this message, okay? So with this, you are able to understand, okay, something wrong with the data type. And again, we are able to understand, look here, rupee, this icon is rupee. I just go here and I check, it is a text data type. What I do is I'll try to convert this cost price is a decimal number. I just convert this, here itself we can specify that. You want to continue? Yes. But don't do it here, okay? If it throws an error or something like that, right? So here we cannot automatically, very good. So good that it was not converting it, okay? Yes, Soumya, you are correct, right? So what I do is, you are correct. So what I do is, best thing, if you want to do any transformation, you do it better, do it in Power Core Editor. Guys, please remember, here also you can, in the case of data view also, you can delete the column, where here you can select the column and delete it. And if you want it back again, you cannot get it back. That is one problem with this one. So better you can use the Power Query Editor if you want to do any kind of data transfer, deleting the column. Because if you want the deleted column back again, you can get it back here. Okay. Look here, we are working the sales fact table. Here, I just go to the cost price. Look here, it is a text data type. I just keep the cursor over here, right click on it. And what I do is I just replace the values. How can I get this value? And keyboard, where we can find the rupee. Okay, let me do one thing. I just select this value here. We can't even select it here. Okay, yeah, it is there here, right? Good. So as look here, I just selected it here. Right click on it, replace values, and you just type it here. And then what you do is values to find the rupee currency. And then here, don't do anything. Okay, don't give anything. That means replace this with an empty string. Click on OK. Yes, that string rupee has gone now. Still, it remains as a text data type. We need to tell explicitly to the Power Query Editor, hey, you need to convert this as a numeric data type. Before you convert that, you need to remove the string part. The rupee sign was a string part. It's a string part, right? So when you combine a string like a rupee, dollar with your numeric value, the entire column value, in this case, the cost price, will get converted as a text data type. So what we need is, we need to remove the text part, and then what you need is, you go here and then convert the decimal number. Cost price is a decimal number. Fine, we did this as a decimal number. Very good. Now I just go back here and close and apply. Apply changes. Now look here, the cost of goods is ready now. If you click on this here, you can see in the formula bar, you can see the logic that you have used it. So I've used two columns in the existing table. You use the two columns, okay, the cost price and sales amount. By taking the product of this one, you are able to derive a new column called cost of goods sold here. Okay, fine. The next step is, now we got the cost of goods sold, and I want to find out the profit here. Okay, I want to find out the profit. The next step is, I just go here. I just click on some other column here. Okay, let me do one thing here also. Here, this one. Okay, I just select some other column here. Okay, I just the column tools. Okay, in the column tools, click on the column. So look here, I don't see the new column here. Click on the column tools. When you click on the column, even some students, they struggle, beginners. Okay, click on the column tools. Here you will find a new column. Just click on the new column here. Now we are going to find out the profit. What is the formula for the profit here? Here what I do is I just say profit is equal to the sales amount sometimes this is the problem. It's not going to display the column name automatically. Into minus, right? And you subtract from the sales fact table. Here the cost of goods sold, COGS. And either you can press enter or you click on the tick mark here. I just click on the tick mark. When you click on the tick mark, this one will get evaluated. After subtracting the cost of goods from a sales amount, the resultant, the output value will get stored in a column called profit. Look here, you can see that a lot of negative profit is there. Okay, what is the problem here? Okay. Here, ideally, what we should have done, right? If you see here, the sales amount is 100, whereas the cost of goods sold, something wrong here. See here, I should have used quantity, right? Not the sales amount, quantity. List price is your selling price. Selling price into quantity will give you the sales amount. Cost price into quantity will give you the cost of goods sold. I just press enter. So you might tend to make these kind of mistakes, right? So I'm doing it intentionally, certain things. Okay, don't think I do it mistakenly. Sometimes, right, I do it intentionally also. Look here, how do you fix this? So I made a mistake. I realized I did this one quickly. I turned around and I identified the problem where I made a mistake, and then we fixed it. And you should be knowing the business logic very well. Okay. Good. So we are able to see that the sales amount 100 for this, the profit we got was 20. Very good. So now what I do is I just go back here and validate the statement what I made here. The calculated column is often used as an intermediate step. In this case, I've used the cost of goods as an intermediate step. Now you might be asking this question, Satya, can't you use the same logic in the single profit itself? Look here, the cost of goods, how we arrived? The cost price into the quantity. Here itself, you could have mentioned it. Since it is doing the row by row evaluation, you could have mentioned it here. So here, my requirement is in the report, along with the profit, they wanted to see the cost of goods also. This is what dictated by my manager. He wants to see for for example, he wants to see region wise how much sales we made and what is the cost of goods and what is the the profit. He wants to see that. Along with the profit, he wants to see the cost of goods also. If I combine these two things into a single column, I will not be able to get the cost of goods sold. So this is a classic example or a typical example for you to create a calculated column. Okay, just because you can create the calculated column, don't create as many calculated columns as possible. Okay, try to reduce. No, it's not a reduce it. Make sure that you are creating the calculated column with the real purpose. If you create more number of calculated columns, it will consume more memory. Already in your table, you will be having 40 to 50 columns will be there. In addition to that, if you add 10 or 12 columns, the calculated columns, it will consume too much of memory, especially in the case of huge volume of the data. Okay, you need to exercise discretion before you decide to go ahead and creating a calculated column. So in this case, obviously, you need this ones. And also if you wanted to use, this column in a slicer, okay, if you want to use a specific column in a slicer, so in this case, yes, you can use this in a slicer. What is a slicer? In the report canvas, we have something like a slicer. Here, right? Look here. Here, I just use the slicer here. Not only text, values, you can use it here. You can also use the numeric. For example, you can drag and drop the cost of goods sold here. And then what you do, look here, I have created the cost of goods sold. I just move this and then I drop it here, cost of goods sold here. And look here, we can see the slider here. If you just drag towards the right side and left side, you can look at this side, right? If I drag this towards the left side, the range of cost of goods. So for this, within this cost of goods, I want to see how much profit we made, all the things, right? In that kind of situation, you need to use this column cost of goods as a slicer. As part of the slicer, you want to use a cost of goods sold. In that kind of situation also, it really makes sense creating a calculated column. Okay, it is calculated at the time of refreshing the memory. Now the question is, okay, now for all the records, you could see that the cost of goods and profit got computed. So will that get evaluated whenever I make any changes to my slicer or filter? For example, you have another filter here, which is I'm calling filter in this sense, I know the slicer. Okay, don't get confused here. What I do is in my sales fact, what other column I have it? Okay, what I do is these are the related tables, location wise, locationing. Okay, and here I just create a table visual. This is slicer. Here what I do is I just gradually side by side I'll show you so that you should be able to understand. Okay, if you select the Bangalore and Delhi, fine. So now if you make any changes to this slide in this slicer, right? In this slicer, I've used the cost of goods sold column here. When you change the value here, okay, or let's say, instead of a slider, you can use list also. Okay, but in general, for numeric values, we use the this one. What is that? The between. Okay, between is a slider. Okay, for you people to understand, I just show here. For example, if I change, if I select a specific values here, for the values, or this is nothing but the filter, right? We are just filtering only the entire data. We are filtering based on only these three values, along with that these two locations. Okay, whenever you apply any filter, it will not affect your cost of goods sold because it's already computed, already calculated. Whereas in the case of measure, I'll explain you measure little later. In the case of measure, whenever you make changes, whenever you changes the values here in your filter, the measure will get calculated on the fly. Every time it will get changed. For example, now I just, I have seen the value here. And if I want to see Bombay here, Bombay, and in addition to that, you want to see 4 more cities. And for this cost of goods range, you want to see the performance. In this case, the moment when you select it, in the case of measure, it will do a calculation. Whenever you make changes in your slicer, especially when you frequently make changes to your slicer, the measure will get calculated. Then, for each time you make a selection in your slicer. Okay, so if you have huge volume of the data, especially since it computes the values, right? It does the computation as and when you make changes, especially when you frequently changes the values in your slicer every time, right? Every time you make changes, the formula or the calculation that you use in your measure will get evaluated. It will get executed that time. It will try to calculate on the fly, whenever you make changes. Whereas here it is not like that. In the case of calculated column, in the case of calculation, it's already computed. You don't have to compute as and when you make changes here. It is not doing that. It's already pre-calculated. Now the question is, when will that get refreshed? When will that recalculated? Whenever you go to the home page and you click on the refresh, only that time this one will get recalculated. Otherwise, it will not get recalculated. If you apply any filter or slicer, it will not. It will not, affect this value. Okay, that is what this point says, and not recalculated when filter changes. This is what I explained it now. Okay, and pre-calculated and stored. The calculated column values are pre-calculated. One, that's all. If you remember this much, that is more than sufficient. And that too, if you tell it line by step by step, you don't have to memorize it. If you understand, that's why I explained it with the demo. so that if you remember it, you can tell them, you can list out 4 or 5 points quickly, so that they'll think, yeah, you are good at the concepts, everything. The next one is the measure. So now we discussed about calculated column. Hope you all understood. Calculated column, we create, if you want to have any additional column in your existing table, then you go for calculated column. In the case of calculated column, it does the row by row computation. Remember this. At least if you remember these 2 points, at this moment it is okay. Okay. Next one is the measure. Okay, we have something else called calculated measure. So far we discussed about calculated column. Now we are going to discuss about the calculated measure. What is calculated measure? A measure is a formula, okay, that is evaluated in the context in which it is used. For example, if you use a measure in a matrix visual, the formula will be the formula, whatever the formula that you are using to measure, that will be evaluated for each matrix row and column combination separately. Okay. So we can see in general, we create a measure to compute any aggregation or to perform any aggregation. That kind of situation we use measure. So measures are usually aggregations, not pre-calculated. In the case of calculator, row by row, we are coming quantity into price, each row go and come. So in the case of measure, no, don't go row by row. So you take the summary of or the total of a specific column. It is a pre-calculated one. You just think that way. The measure does not live in your data set. Rather, it calculated on the fly when called up. Whenever you drag and drop the measure into your visual, only that time this one will get calculated. Hence, right, the measure will not get stored in your table. This is the second point. The third point is can be reused on other measures. Once you create a measure, you can reuse it in other measure. Okay, measures recalculate each time whenever the user make changes to the filter or slicer, right? So it can cause your report to respond slowly, especially if the user frequently changes the values in the filter and our slicer. What will happen is in the case of measure, since the values are not getting stored or it's not a pre-calculated one, on the fly, it will give. Whenever you make a changes, that time it goes and computes. Okay, hence it is a CPU intensive process. Calculated column is a memory intensive, whereas measure is a CPU intensive process. If you remember, this is more than sufficient. And the next one is the types of measures. There are two types of measure. One is the implicit measure and the other one is the explicit measure. What is implicit? What is explicit measure? There is no right. So which one is better? So there is no right answer here. There are two schools of thought. Schools of thought. The Power BI. See, the idea of this one is implement implicit measure is Power BI should behave like Excel. Let's say you're Satya, you already worked with Excel, right? You know very well, when you create a pivot table or chart, the sum and count is getting computed by default, right? You don't have to use some function and all. In the case of pivot table and chart, it does the sum and compute count automatically. I wanted the same functionality to be implemented in Power BI. That's why what they did in Power BI, if you see just before any numeric column, you will find the summarized property. What is the summarized property? Look here, the cost price. Just before this, you can see the sum, sigma sign, which means sum, right? Summary. And quantity, just before that, you can see sum. And sales amount, you can see sum here, right? So the numeric values, numeric columns are summarized by property. And the next point here is this is implicit measure. They want to simulate something like Excel so that the Excel users can, their learning curve will be pretty faster in terms of learning the DAX. That's the reason why they have introduced the functionality or similar to Excel in Power BI, the implicit measure. The next one is the explicit measure. We need to define the measure explicitly. Not all the implicit measures are helpful because in the real-time scenario, the logic or business rules are not very challenging or very complex one, right? In some cases, it will be low complex, medium complex, high complex. And most of the business now, if you see, right, the business logic is moderate to advanced level. Okay, so in that case, right, you need to write a measure explicitly to suit to your specific business logic or business problem. Okay, before I go ahead and compare the difference between calculated column and measure, I just show you how to create a measure. We already discussed about measure, and also I have shown you how to create a measure in Power BI. Once again, I'll tell you how to create a measure in Power BI. Listen very carefully. Look here. This is your report canvas. I just clicked on this. Currently, you are in report canvas. I just clear this slicer here. Okay, I don't want to do any filtering. I just cleared this one. And the next one is if you want to create any measure, right? You have two options. Either you can go to the modeling ribbon, and here you can click on the new measure. The other option is go to your table on the right side, just beneath the fields pane. You have all the tables are available. Here, what you do is you can go to the sales fact table. Next to that, you can see three dots here, and just click on it. Here, you can new column. Sorry, yeah, new measure. Right, the first one is the new measure, not the new column. New measure. Okay, if you click on it, where there you can, once you click on it, it will open the formula bar here itself, and where you can write the you can create the measure. So for the time being, what I do is I just click on the modeling tab. Here you can see three or four different options. One is the new measure and the new column. This is your calculated column, and this is your new table. Calculated table, calculated column, and calculated measure. This is a quick measure. This one I will discuss it later. Okay, so now I just click on the new measure. Currently, I just selected the modeling tab, and here I could see the new measure. I just click on it. Here, what I do is I just create a new measure. Total sales is equivalent to sum. Sum is an aggregation function. It is a DAX function. What I do is I just use sales fact. Here I use the sales amount. This is my sales amount. I just close the parenthesis and then click on this one, the tick mark. I don't see any error. Good. I just minimize this one. I just click on this. Okay, fine. So my measure got created. The total sales amount value got stored in a variable called total sales. This variable is nothing but measure. Now I will show you one thing. This is very important. Just watch here. I just click on another table visual. Look here, the table visual got dragged here on this left side. What I do is total sales. Look here, the total sales, I created it. This is the measure I created it. I just move this. I just drag and drop this here. Very good. So we can see that the table visual. Or else what I do is I just convert this as this is a table visual. If you want to convert this as to any other visual, you can go and just select this visual and go and click on any other visual. For example, you need to remember this one. Okay, the total sales I just dragged and dropped inside the table visual. Okay, here I don't, I did not select any visual. The moment when I drag and drop it, just like that here, it will create a column chart. It will create a column chart. And if you hover the cursor on top of this, you can see that 4.56K, 4,56,000 total sales. By default, when you drag and drop a numeric or any, the measure in your empty canvas, it will create the column chart automatically. Fine. Okay, now I just want to convert this as a table visual. You just go here and click on the table visual. This column chart will become a table automatically. Okay, that is what I was trying to say. Okay, now we are able to create the measure. What is the bullet point here? The second bullet point. The measures are usually aggregations. I have used the sum function, sum of sales amount. It is not pre-calculated. Whenever I drag and drop, so look here, when I drag and drop it here, it will get computed. When I drag and drop it, it will get computed. Okay, it can be reused on other measures. Okay, you can use this one into other measures that I will show you little later. The measures calculate each time when the user changes a filter. Look here, when I change this one, Bombay or Hyderabad, look here, the total sales got changed because in Mumbai and Hyderabad, the totals, both these cities put together, we made this much sales. And in addition to that, if I select Chennai or Bangalore, look here, it is getting increased. When I unselect, look here, this is the overall sales. All these locations put together, this is the overall sales. And when I select this one, Kolkata, Delhi, so look here, these four cities put together this one. Whenever you make changes to this one, the formula inside your total sales, the total, right, it will get computed as and when you change it, okay? Since it is a CPU intensive one, okay, now the question is, okay, we have discussed about implicit measure. We don't have to worry about the implicit measure. Okay. Anyhow, I just show you here. Look here, I just selected this table. I just, in this case, I've used the measure by the name of total sales. Look here, this is the measure, I created it. I just, dragged and dropped this here directly. The moment you drag and drop this measure into your table visual, this measure gets moved to your columns field. Okay, this is where we specify the axis, x-axis, y-axis in the case of bar chart, column chart and all. Since it's a table visual, it accepts only, it has only one field. So you can drag as many columns or measures as possible here. In this case, I just dragged and dropped the total sales here, or instead of dragging and dropping it directly here, you can drag and drop it here also. But this is an alternative approach. Fine. And now, okay, so now the point what I'm trying to make is, this is the measure we created. I just dragged and dropped it here. So it shows the total sales for all the locations. Forget about the slicer. I did not do any selection here. Now what I do is, I just remove the total sales. Now it became empty. I just drag and drop the this is my sales fact table. I just select this one here. I have the sales amount. I just drag and drop this here. Look here. In this case, I just dragged and dropped the sales amount column here. I did not use measure here. I did not use any formula, right? Sum of sales amount, I did not use it. Listen very carefully. I just dragged and dropped the sales amount, and this value and the measure value, both of them are matching. Why? This is because it is because of the implicit measure. Each numeric column, along with that, you can see this sigma symbol, right? So when you click on this sales amount column, look here, by default on top here, if you look here, the summarization is sum by default. The default aggregation function is used sum in the case of implicit measure, especially in the case of numeric variables. You don't have to create a measure explicitly. Okay, now you understood. But it is not a good practice using the existing numeric column as a measure, okay? Because sometimes you need sum of sales amount, you need average. And for example, if you go and change it to average here, you have an option here also in the summarization. If you select average here, it is a fixed thing, right? And if you want to compute the average sales across the location, and you want to compute the number of records, transactions we made in each city, and the average sales across the city, and total sales we made across the city, and the count, right, number of transactions we made across the city. If you want to see it, this is not much helpful. If you go and configure it once here, it will become a static one. Don't do anything, let it be there. For that purpose, what you do is, it is advisable to create a measure, explicit measure. So now you understood the difference between explicit and implicit measure. Implicit measure is, for the numeric variables, Power BI automatically performs the sum. Okay, when you drag and drop into visual, it gives you the sum of the value, right? Total value. It does the total automatically. But in this case, I've created the explicit measure. We have created the explicit measure. Fine. So now what I do is I just go here and I go to this one, the data view. And here, if you see here on the right side, no, so okay, this is not that table. I just click on the sales fact table. Now, if you see here, the profit, sales fact, sorry, the sales amount minus cost of goods sold, right? This is what I've used it. Can I use the same thing in my measure? Okay, otherwise what I do is, okay, I just go to this one. And here what I do is, the cost of goods sold. Okay, not that one. I just take the profit. Yeah, this is the calculated column. This is the total profit. It gives me this one. Look here, this is the total profit. Sorry, this is the profit. For each and every line item, we can line item wise, we can see the profit. For this sales amount, how much profit we got it. That's what we can see it here. Can I use the same formula in my measure? Can I do the same thing in my measure? Or instead of going different thing, the same thing, okay? So how did we get the sales amount? Quantity into list price. Quantity into list price, you got the sales amount. Okay, but here, since sales amount value is already available, we did not use list price into quantity. If you don't have the sales amount, you'll have to multiply the list price by the quantity in order to get the sales amount for each and every record. Since it's being a calculated column, it computes the sales amount for each and every record if you take the product of your list price into quantity. Done. So can I do the same thing here? Okay, forget about the profit and cost of goods sold. Can I do the same thing in measure? List price and quantity, if I multiply it, can I get the sales amount? This is what your sales amount, okay? What I do is, I create another, I just remove the profit here so that I don't want to keep so many things. In this case, sales amount, I used it. So here what I do is, I'm going to create another measure. So I'm a lazy guy. Okay, I just copy paste the existing one and click on the new measure. I just say row by row. Can I perform row by row operation in Power BI? In the case of measure, we'll see how we can do that. I'm going to use SumX function here. And here I just say the first argument is an iterating function, sales fact. Here what I do is the quantity into a listed price. Since this column is not available, it's available only this one, right? It works. Sales amount row by row. If I do this, will it work? Did we get any error? No, I did not get any error. Good. Sales amount row by row. So, here in this case, I created a measure. In this case, what I did, I used the SumX function. Using the SumX function, I performed the row by row operation as for the measure itself. Now what I do is, I create another table. It will be slightly confusing. Don't worry. I will just put the comments here. Total sales. So I just type row by row. I don't remember what I created it. Okay, here, yeah, it is. This is the one I just. So that's the reason why you need to create a separate table for the measure. So here, what happens? Look here. it got created, and calculation error in measure, add columns to cannot convert value 50 rupees of type. Oh, even the same issue with the listed price. Listed price is a text data type because just before the price, the this thing is there. Okay, just quickly address this one. I just go here and click on the transform. And select sales fact table. Here what I do is I just go to the listed price column. Listed price is actually a decimal, or it's a numeric variable column, numeric data type, but here it got assigned with the ABC because each numeric value is prefixed with the rupee currency. The rupee currency is a text along with the numeric value. If you put the text, it will become an alphanumeric. At the end of the day, it will convert the entire table data type as a text data type. Now I just right click on it, and then I just need some value here. I just select this one because in the keyboard I don't see this one. Copy, right click on it, and the replace values. Here what I do is I just copy paste this one, and here the rupee. Wherever the rupee is there, currency, replace it with empty string. I just click on OK. The same thing, whatever I did it, here I'm doing it. Because you cannot do any arithmetic operation with the text data type. I just click on it and I just make a decimal number. So good, we are good to go with that measure. See, in this case, it was not giving any error when I was creating the measure, right? Whereas in the case of calculated column, it was giving an error instantly, right? Look here, now that issue got sorted out. We are all set. Look here, when you select this one got highlighted. That means for this table, I have used this measure. So inside the measure also, we can, using the sumx function, you can iterate row by row. This is the takeaway for you. Not only the calculated column does the row context. Row context is nothing but row by row operation. Henceforth, I'm going to refer row context, which means row by row computation will be done in the case of calculated column. Is there any possibility I can do the implement the row context as part of my measure? Yes, it is possible, but you cannot use a measure here. You cannot drag and drop a measure here once you create it. And also you cannot use a measure in your slicer. You cannot use a measure in your slicer. That's why I told you cost of goods. If you want to use this column as part of a slicer, then you have to have a calculated column. Instead of creating calculated column, you could have created the measure like this, right? Because in the case of measure, you can use the iterating function to perform row by row operation. But the problem is you cannot use the measure in your slicer. Full stop. Understood? So here what I did, I created measure, explicit measure. This is my implicit measure. And this one is, when you select this one, let me just do one thing. I just unselect everything. And this one is my sales amount. This is the, so what is the difference between these two? Yeah, in this case, I have created, same thing. I just remove it. This is explicit, implicit measure, and this is a measure, but in this case, I've used the iterating function sumx, using which you can iterate row by row. Very good. Now we understood, right? So what is the difference between calculated column and measure? So what are the advantages of measure? What are the advantages of measure? So when can I use measure? Okay, now we will quickly compare. Okay, when to use measure? Now the question is when to use measure. Fine. So how to create a measure? Now you understood. Okay, using measure also you can iterate row by row. Now you understood. Fine. So when can I go for a measure? When can I go for a calculator? Calculated column, you are pretty clear. If you want to use, uh, a column as part of your slicer, then you need to have a calculated column. Okay. And in some cases, you want to use column to store a temporary value, like in the case of cost of goods, a temporary result, right? And once you compute that, based on which you want to compute the profit, you can do it. Okay, with the help of the pre-existing calculator column, the cost of goods sold, you can compute the profit. In that kind of situation, you can use it. If you want to calculate a ratio, if you want to calculate a percentage, if you want to perform any aggregation, in that kind of situation, you can go for measure. But remember that measure is CPU intensive. Okay, it's always good if you use some filtering condition, okay, criteria, so that it will not cause much performance issues. It depends on the volume of the data. It depends on the type of selection that you make it in your filter or slicer. Okay, now we will quickly understand the difference between the calculated column and the measure. What is the difference between these two? It is stored in memory. Which one? The calculated column. It calculates at the time of refresh, and it consumes memory because the data gets stored in memory. The columns get stored in memory, X velocity memory. It consumes more memory, especially if the volume of the records are very high. And calculated columns are known for row by row calculation. The next one is the measures. Measure is not stored in memory. Unlike calculated column, measure is not stored in memory. It is getting calculated on the fly. It consumes CPU since it performs the computation on the fly. It consumes CPU. It's something like, if you write the 5 table in your note, right? So 5 ones are 5, 5 twos are 10. So you have the pre-calculated value. If somebody asks you, just look at it and tell it. But if somebody is asking you, hey, can you tell me 5 into 18, how much? Then you need to calculate it. You need to calculate on, if they ask different questions, right? So you need to calculate it because you did not write it in the note. You cannot see and tell immediately, right? So it's something like that. Measure is something like that, right? It performs the calculations on the fly, hence it requires more CPU. It is usually it is a result of an aggregation, the sum of something like that, or the sum of total sales, something like that. Okay, sum of units sold, something like that, and then net revenue, those kind of things and all, will be using it. Even in the case of computing the net revenue, you can go for calculated column, because anything requires the row by row, you can go for calculator. So values can be seen when adding in the report, as and when you create the calculated column, like quantity into list price. It gives you, it displays the value for each and every record, the sales amount, right? It displays each and every record. You can see the data instantly, whereas in the case of measure, as soon as you create the measure, you cannot see the value, like calculated column, unless you drag and drop the measure into a visual. You cannot see the value stored in your measure. Now the question is when to use calculator column and calculator measure. Use the value as a filter condition in your DAX query. In that kind of situation, you can use calculated column. Not only in slicer, even the case of filter condition, right? So for example, where sales amount is greater than something, okay? In that kind of situation, you can go for calculated column and define an expression that is bound to the current row. Okay, in that kind of situation, if anything bound to the current row, for example, quantity into list price, for each and every line, right? Each record, the sales amount is depending on each line's quantity and price. It varies from one record to another record, the sales amount, because each record, the listed price and quantity may not be same all the time, right? So that is what it says. Use the value in rows or columns of a pivot table. Okay, and in the case of pivot table, if you want to use the values as a rows and columns, then you can go for calculate column. And this is what I said, use the value in a slicer. Cost of goods sold, if you want to use that column as part of a slicer, then you need to have the calculated column. Now the question is, when do I use a measure? If you use a value that reflects the user selection of filters, slicer, highlighted visuals, whenever the user makes some selections based on which if you want to change it, right? So it can, in that kind of situation, measure is used. Importantly, if you want to perform any aggregation and calculate a ratio or percentage, that kind of situation, measure is very much helpful. Hope you understood the difference between the calculated column and the calculated measure, and also we understood when to use which one, right? But anyhow, on a case-to-case basis, you need to decide. Okay, in some cases, the volume of the data is very high. Just because you want to do some kind of aggregation, you don't want to create something, right? You know, some calculated column. If you want to do some kind of aggregation, obviously you don't need a row by row operation. In that case, you can go for measure. It is a trade-off. The volume of the data is very high, and I have to, because when the user makes a frequent changes to the slicer, obviously it has to compute the total on the fly. It requires more CPU. It's a trade-off. Nothing can be done, okay, in some cases. But again, different performance tuning techniques are there, which we'll discuss it later. I don't want to discuss everything now. And we have another 30 minutes. We will continue with the another important concept called evaluation context. If you want to learn DAX, and if you want to master DAX, then you need to know the evaluation context concept thoroughly. If you don't understand this, you are gone. It's a very simple concept, but if you go through the net, you will break your head. Okay, one, you need to go through multiple blogs, multiple YouTube videos. You need to watch it, but still you will not have the holistic idea. Okay, in-depth idea about what exactly evaluation context is all about, because this term is it's kind of a fancy term. I would say it's a fancy term. So what exactly evaluation context, we will take a look at it now. The environment in which a DAX formula is evaluated is called your evaluation context. The environment in which a DAX formula is evaluated is called your evaluation context. Okay, so you might be confused with this, and definitely you would have confused with this one. The environment in which a DAX formula is evaluated, right? So you will get confused. So what I will do is, with this example, I'll help you to understand what does that mean. Evaluate, right? Environment in which a DAX formula is evaluated. For example, I just create the same visual. I just click on the table visual. Okay, fine. And I just go to the fields pane. And here I already created the total sales. We'll just play around with this simple example. As we move further, I will increase the complexity. Okay, we'll introduce some, we'll work on the bit complex one. What is this total sales? This is a measure. I just clicked on this. You can see that sum function, we used it. Sum of sales amount got stored here. Good. It's a very interesting one. Good. Fine. So what is so interesting about this, right? When you drag and drop the total sales amount, it shows the total sales of your data set, right? Sales amount, total sales of it. What is so interesting about this? It's not giving any interesting thing, right? So what you need to do is, for example, when I drag and drop location, a categorical variable or a column which is categorical in nature. Okay, I want to change the column order. How can you change that? I wanted to have the location name column should appear first, and then the total sales column should appear next. So in that case, what you need to do is you just go to the columns here, move this up, location name. Look here, automatically when you move this up, in this case, I moved location name on top of the total sales. Hence now location name column displays first. Very good. So now what I do is I just copy paste this for our reference sake. Here I just remove the location name. When I dragged and dropped the measure total sales into the same visual, the table visual, it was showing the total sales for my entire data set. But the moment when I dragged and dropped the location column, not only location, you can use any categorical, a column which is in categorical nature. If you drag and drop it for a text column, okay. So in that case, what will happen is, so in this case, what happens? So if you see here, it shows only the total sales. And the moment when I dragged and dropped the location name column along with this column, Still the total sales remains same. But the beauty here is for each and every city, it gives me the breakdown of the sales, total sales. Sales breakdown, total sales breakdown by each city. Okay, this is 4,56,000 is for all these city put together, my total sales. What is the how much total sales we made in each city? For that, I just did the drag and drop. I just dropped the location name along with this one. Now we could see the magic here. It automatically, right, it does the filtering of the sales fact table, and then it applies the sum on the applied filter. See what happens, it automatically gives the split up out of this total in Bangalore, how much total sales we made. It gives the split up automatically. Did we made any changes to the measure? No, right? If you see my measure, it just shows sum of sales amount. That's all. We did not write any special logic to do the split up. And similarly, look here, when I drag and drop the category column, I just type it here. Here I have the category. Yeah, this is the one I'm interested in at the moment. When I drag and drop here, you can see that. In both the cases, what you notice here, in both the cases, the total sales value is same. With this, now you understood what an evaluation context is. Depends on the environment, right? See, before computing the total, right, before it does the split up, it evaluates the context, whether it requires the filter context or does it requires a row by row context. There are two types of context. One is row by row context, other one is filter context. But here the total sales remain same, but if you look at each and every line item here, Bangalore, the total sales is different, but here the beverages total sales is different. Obviously, this is a common sense, right? Here the category is different from location name. But here I did not write any special logic to give the split up, the split up for the sales for each category. It does it automatically. That is the beauty of Power BI. So how it is possible, how it gives us the split up? Because of the relationship between the tables. We already defined the relationship. Okay, this is where the relationship matters a lot. That is the reason why in the interview they'll expect you, how good we are with respect to data modeling concept. Look here. So in this location, I have used the location column. Location column is available here, location name. But in this table, I have just the location key column is there. Now these two tables, they say, look here, in this table, I have the sales amount available. In this table, I have the location name is available. In this case, I need data from these two tables. To extract the data from two tables, you need to join the two tables based on the common key column. What is the common key column between these two tables? Just the, I just scroll this down here. And if you hover the cursor on top of this line, you can see that in the dim location table, the location key, and in the sales fact table location key column, these two columns got highlighted, which means based on these two columns, we join these two tables. Why? Because I need the data from these two tables. Location name is available here only. Here just location key only is available. Okay, I need to display the sales amount along with the location name. So hence we need to join these two tables. Yes, we already created the relationship. It is a one-to-many relationship. Very good. Now what happens is, if you see the arrow here, this is my dimension table. The arrow is flowing down. The location key is flowing down to my fact table. You remember in the case of data modeling session, I explained to what is filtering. The location table is filtering my sales fact table in this case. So what happens is, since you have the relationship here, let's say you have the in this data set, for example, I just go here, the location dimension. So what happens, since you already created the relationship between these two tables, the dim location and sales fact table, what happens is, it first go to this record. Okay, and then in the first record, in this first column, BLR value, is that right? This is my location table. Listen very carefully. And then what it does is it goes to your sales fact table. Here, the location key, what will happen is from your dimension table, first record was BLR, location key, right? Since you have the relationship, the dimension location table will filter your fact table with the relevant location key. The first value was Bangalore, but there only one value is there, right? Only one record is there for Bangalore. Based on the Bangalore key, you create the relationship. It does the filtering automatically behind the scene, and then it applies the sum on your sales amount column. It does the sum on your sales amount column. Similarly, it goes from one record to another record. First record was BLR in my dim location table. Second record, let's say you have Pune. So PUN. And then what it does is it comes to your sales fact table, and then it will go and check where the Pune column is. It goes and filter the Pune. Okay, I just go here. I just show you here one more time. Location here. In this case, Chennai is there, CHN. The key is CHN, and then it goes, what it does is in the sales fact table, wherever the CHN records are the related records, it goes and filter only that one. And then it applies the sum on that. And once the sum is done, and the next one is Hyderabad, it goes and select all the records that are relevant to Hyderabad from your sales fact table. And then it applies the sum. And finally, you get something like this. This is because of the relationship you created. Now you understood, how important creating the relationship, the correct relationship between the tables is important. So in this case, this column comes from dim location table. This one comes from your sales fact table. These two are different, but you have created one-to-many relationship between these two tables. The this table is filtering the sales fact table with the relevant location. So here Bangalore, first it goes to Bangalore, and then it goes and filter all the records relevant to Bangalore in a total sales, and then it applies the sum, and then the total sum values get displayed here. And then it skips to the next record in your location table, dimension table. Second record is Chennai, and all the Chennai related records will get filtered in your sales fact table, and then it applies the sum on that. It gives this one. Hope you understood with this one. So in this case, this is a dim category, right? So the category dimension category called table filtered your sales fact table. Since you have defined the relationship as part of a data model, the split up is happening automatically, though we did not write any special logic to filter, right, automatically. Right? How it is happening? Because of the relationship. You need to remember this. Okay, so now you understood. So here the total sales are same, but each line item, this sales amount is not same. Okay, with this you are able to understand what exactly evaluation context is all about. The moment when you drag and drop the location name, the moment when you drag and drop the category column here, so before it performs the computation, behind the scene, the DAX engine evaluates whether this query requires the row context or filter context. So in this case, it requires a filter context, row-wise filter context. So go to Bangalore and filter the corresponding records in your sales fact table and apply the sum. Okay, and here also the same thing. So in your total sales column, had you used average, it does, it filters all the records relevant to Bangalore in your sales fact table, and then it applies the average function, because in the total sales used average, right? But in this case, we have used sum function. So here I have used the location name. Here I have used the category along with this measure. Because of the different environment, we are getting the different values for each row. Okay. So this is called as evaluation context, the environment in which a DAX formula is evaluated. In this case, the environment is the location name column. In this case, the environment is category. Got it? the environment with this is called your evaluation context. So there are two types of evaluation context. One is the row context and filter context. Before evaluating the DAX formula, the Power BI, it applies the evaluation context in two parts. The one is the row context and the filter context. Okay. Now I just go to the Power BI and sorry, PowerPoint, and then I'll just show you the same thing. How do we get different value on each row? I meant about this row, okay, beverages and this one, because of the environment in which it is getting evaluated differently. There are two types of evaluation context. One is row context and the filter context. But if you look at the internet, there is something else called query context. Query context is the combination of these two, okay, row context and the filter context. The row context, we have already discussed a row context. When you define a calculated column, DAX create a row context automatically. Or when you use the iterating function, it does the, see, you remember in the case of measure, I have used the iterating function sumx. So though it is a measure, since I used the iterating function sumx, it was doing the row by row context. Not only in the calculated column, you can do the row by row context. Even in the case of measure, you can do the row by row calculation with the iterating function. You need to remember this. So row context is calculated whenever an expression iterates over a table. That is what we discussed so far, right? And the next one is the filter context. Okay, row context in a calculated column, the calculation is done row by row. Evaluated whenever expression iterates over a table. The row context exists in a calculated column. The same thing. Okay, the row context does not propagate through relationship automatically. This is the one you need to remember it. Supposing I want to bring, see, in this case we are lucky, but in real time scenario you're not that much lucky. Okay, all the odds will fall on your head. I don't know about you people. In my life, I pose a lot of odds, a lot of strange things. It happens to me only. Okay, I don't know. So this is the fact table. Here we have the cost price column is available. Usually the cost price will available as part of the product table. Okay, so in that case, if you want to bring the cost price, let's say you don't have the cost price here, you want to bring the cost price here. So in that case, if you don't have the relationship between these two tables, you cannot bring it here. Okay, for that we have something. For that we use some related function, but there is something called lookup value function. With that you can bring it, but lookup value is not much helpful. It has its own flaws. Okay, and what we do is we have some related function, but in that case you need to have the relationship defined between the tables. If you don't define the relationship between the tables, it will not work. The row context does not propagate through relationship automatically. Okay, so yeah, you need to use the function. See, in the case of measure, we have seen, right, the moment you drag and drop the category column along with the total sales, and the moment you drag and drop the location name along with your sales amount, the measure does the filtering automatically. But in the case of row context, it is not happening directly. Okay, if I want to bring the cost price, I need to use some function like a the related function, or I need to use lookup function. That we will see it probably in the next session. It is already late now. Okay. Okay, remember this. This is very important. Row context iterates the table, but it does not filter. In the case of calculated column, it iterates row by row. It doesn't have the capability to do the filtering. Whereas in the case of filter context, if you use iterating function, it iterates, but in general it is not iterating, but it does the filtering, the opposite. But in the case of measure, you can do both iterating. Using the iterator function, you can iterate the records row by row, and also you can do the filtering. Now let us understand the filter context. In another 10 minutes, I'll finish it off because this is very important. If I continue this in the next session, there will be a serious disconnect. With this, I'm going to wrap up. Don't worry. I think, you all feeling hungry. The next one is the filter context. Filter context used whenever a measure is calculated. It is pretty simple. Row context is used whenever I use a calculated column. The filter context used whenever a measure is calculated. It is set of filters applied to the data model before evaluation of a DAX expression being started. Set of filters applied to the data model. Let us not memorize this. I just give you a demo so that you should be able to understand. Set of filters applied to the data model. What is the set of filters? The row level filter, column level filter, matrix level row and column thing. And then in addition to that, filter selection or slicer selection. It applies the set of filters. In your report, you are using the matrix visual, you are using filter, and you are using slicer. All these, what are the filters that you make it, right? All these things will get applied on your data model, and then the data get refreshed in your visual. Okay, what I do is, okay, here itself we will take, in order to understand this, and instead of going there, can someone tell me, this is my matrix or table, okay? And here I highlighted this value, 7,986. So what is the initial filter context for this particular cell? What is the initial filter context? How it arrived this value? Because of the relationship, right? The location table filters my sales fact table. Okay, in this case, for this specific, we are talking about this highlighted record or this value. In this case, the initial filter context for this highlighted cell is only coming from this row, Hyderabad. Okay, so when you, for example, if you go here and if you click on Hyderabad, look here, in this visual, it got highlighted, and then the corresponding value, right, in Hyderabad, under this 4 category, how much sales we made in total. That's what it shows. If I select Delhi, look here, remember this value. If I select Chennai, it shows different value. Chennai, the sales is very high. Bangalore, 6,138. So the filter is coming from the row level, right? And this is your cross filter, okay? But in this case, for example, Delhi, right? Forget about this one. In this case, 21,200, right? This is, let's say, for this value, the initial filter is Delhi. For this record, the initial filter is Chennai. Dim category, it shows some error, Monica. No, that I created something here, the divide and all. You don't worry about it, because here I just copy pasted this file. You can ignore that. Don't worry about it. See, at this point, you understand what is the initial filter context. Okay. In this case, the filter context comes from Delhi for this row. And for this value, the filter context comes from Chennai. In this case, the filter came from Bangalore. Okay. That is what, this is a row level filter. The next one is, so, okay, what is happening behind the scene? Look here, the same thing. I just copy paste location key and location. This is what I explained earlier. So what happens is, since you have already created a relationship between the location table and this is a sales fact table, what happens is, here it's a one-to-many relationship. First, it goes to, see, in this case, right, the filter comes from where? This row. In this row, the location key is Hyderabad. It propagates this value. It copies this value. Propagate in the sense it copies this value to your fact table, and then, or it applies this value to this one, and then it filters. Look at this, a filter. So what it says is, hey, go and select all the records that are related to Hyderabad in the sales fact table. And then the next step is apply sum on this entire column. For this Hyderabad alone, apply the sum function on this. So hence you are getting 7,986. This is what you are getting it here, right? In the previous slide. So in this case, the initial filter context is Hyderabad for this record, for this highlighted value, right? 7,986. For this, the initial filter context is Hyderabad. I don't know, my system's hanging. Okay, 1 second. Okay, now it's got clear. So 7986. This is what is happening behind the scene, right? So this one is available in your other table. This column is available in another table. Since you have one-to-many relationship between these two, it passes the Bangalore to, what happens is the location table filters your sales table each by each and every location key. So first what it does is it takes, it sends this value to your sales fact table, and then it filters all the Bangalore related records, and then it applies the sum, and then it gets this value. Similarly, the same thing is happening for Chennai and other cities. Okay, now you tell me what is the filter context for this one, initial filter context. In this case, we have rows as well as columns. In each city, category wise, how much total sales we made. So in this case, it's a matrix usually gives the row wise total, column wise total. Forget about this one. Now for this highlighted one, okay, I displayed the answer here. Okay, so for the highlighted value here, what is the filter context? The filter context is the location Hyderabad and the product category is dairy. Okay, the moment, see, when you have only the location name and the total sales, location wise, it will show the date. In addition to that, if you drop another column category along with this one, right? But in this case, matrix, we have dragged and dropped this category column into your column field, and this one you dropped into your row field. See, I just show you quickly here. Here's some more time. So this I will convert this. See, this one I will convert as a matrix visual. How I convert it? I just selected this. I click on the matrix visual. It will get converted as a matrix visual. And in the case of matrix, you know, on the right side, you can see here, right? So you can see rows, columns field, and then values. 3 fields are there. Okay. In the rows field, you can see the location name, right? Location name, you can see it here. And in the columns, column, we don't have anything. And then if you scroll down here, the total sales comes from here, right? And in the columns, what I do is I just drag and drop the category here. When I drag and drop category, look here what happens here. Even if I drag and drop a single text column along with the measure, it did the row wise filtering. Along with the row, when I drag and drop the column, it does the row wise, column wise filtering. So in Bangalore, in beverages category, how much sales we made in total. In Chennai, in the case of dairy category, how much? It does the filtering row by, column by, it does this. That is what it tells you here. Filter context as the following source of filter. From the row it can come, and in this case it comes from the row, it comes from the column. And then in addition to that, if for example you have a slicer, I just click on a slicer here, and when I use not the category, probably I will use the location. Here what I do is I just select the specific city, right? So now the filter is not only coming from a row, and also it comes from the external one, the slicer in this case. Okay, in this case slicer. So the best example is, okay, instead of using this one, I just use the year or something like that, so that you will be able to month. Let me just go here in my calendar table. Guys, don't worry, I will just wrap up quickly. And here I just what I do is I just remove the location name. I just display the month. Okay, this is the classic example. For example, if I select January, any specific month, okay, May month. So the filter is coming from, okay, the filter is coming from 3 different places. For example, you look at this one. The row wise filter is Chennai, column wise is dairy. In Chennai, in the dairy category, how much sales we made in January, February, May. That's it, guys. Got it? Similarly, you have something like filter here. Here also you can apply the filter. The same principle, whatever month you selected. In addition to this, let's say here you selected June month. In the filter, you selected June, January, March, May, June, right? And then for this row and for this category, for that, for those specific 4 months, what is the total sales it gives us? Okay, this is what the called as your initial filter context. Okay, this is what it's all because of the relationship behind the tables. Okay, this is a product table, fact sales, calendar table. So in this case, August month, right? August month. And here in this slicer, you selected August month. And the row wise row filter, right? In the Bangalore row, it filters the data by Bangalore. And then they will say the product is ice cream. In the product ice cream or the categories ice cream and the Bangalore, these three filters from your product table, calendar table location will be sent to your fact sales. And the fact sales, what happens is, hey, select all the Bangalore related records. In that record, select only the August month sales. And within that August month sales, subset only the ice cream related sales. Got it? This is what I mentioned. So in this case, what happens? The filter context comes from these source of row selection, column selection, and then the filter selection, slicer selection. In addition to that, you can use DAX formulas for 1 second here. Sorry, I'm getting some confusion. Continue with this one. Okay, now we understood the initial filter context. I know. So what exactly the filter context is all about, right? Is a set of filters, row, column, slicers, and filters, and even the DAX measure. Sorry, the DAX function, you can use the filter criteria. The set of filters apply to the data model. Now you understood with what I explained a while back, and one or more applied, and the filter context applied one or more filter contour applied in a calculation to determine a value. It can be applied using visuals and DAX. Okay, the filters can be applied using visuals and DAX also. So filters can be applied using the visuals in the sense, for example, here I selected this also visual, slicer is also visual, right? So if I select this one, it applies the filter on this one. So now you understood the difference between the row context and filter context. Thanks, guys. Thanks for all your time. And with this, I'm going to wrap up because if I talk further, you will be overwhelmed. And okay, we will continue the session followed by. See, next week, yeah, since this weekend everybody's traveling. Most of my students, they mentioned other batches also. They said, and in some anyhow, this is a weekday batch only. Any festival is on 24th and 25th. And yeah, we will next week it will be closed more likely. Okay, or else we will have one more session, right? The weekdays we will have one more session. Most likely next week I will not be available first of all. Okay, what we will do is we will resume the session by November first week, and we'll try to wrap up everything as part of November first week. In the meanwhile, please watch my video, and if you watch it more than once, especially the DAX alone, that is enough. Okay, and you can also watch my previous recorded videos, previous batch recorded videos related to DAX. And if you start practice, a very simple one, very easy to understand. But only thing is when to use which function. That is where you will get confused. And regarding the filter context and row context, you will get confused. That kind of situation. Okay, don't worry. Start with simple always. That's the reason why I created this data set on my own. Okay, the fact sales and the dim location, everything. With less number of records, you can go and validate or whether the filtering is happening, what is the total sales count. If you count it manually, you'll be able to understand quickly. Okay, and this file also I'll be sending it to you all. So we are going to consolidate everything in 3 or 4 different files, so that with comments, everything you can see it in each file, so that later point in time, if you want to refer it, it will be very easier. Here also, here itself we'll put the comments. Okay, and then we'll share it to you. And also we'll train you the different KPIs, so that it will be easier for you at the time of interview to tell what KPIs that at least minimum 5 to 7 KPIs you should be knowing it, each person. Fine, it's already too late. I think you all exhausted. Any questions so far? Yeah, we will work on the use cases, correct. I forgot to tell you this one. The next session, the DAX related use cases, we will work on it, the real-time scenarios. We will work on it so that you will be able to understand how to apply this in the real-time scenario. And also the assignment, right? That I will walk you through that, the solution. If possible, I'll create videos and put it there. And yeah, today's session, the initial, right, beginning thing, I did not record the sum and sum x. I will record it separately and share it with you all, okay? Okay, thanks for all your patience, okay, and joining the student. And advanced Diwali wishes to you all. And we will circle back on first week of November. In the meanwhile, I will share some more assignments. You can give it a try, okay? And then if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. WhatsApp, I'll be available most of the time. Even I work in the late nights also in the office because we work until 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Okay. But I'll be available between 12:30 to 3 p.m. to check your messages and all, to respond it. Okay. Night time and all, I will not be responding it because I'll be in continuous calls. Okay, guys, thanks for all your the patience. We will circle back next weekend. Okay, we'll share the file as well as this one. Somebody is asking. Okay, thanks, Abhinay. Wish you the same. Wish you all the advanced happy Diwali. Okay, see you all the first week of November. Okay, enjoy your vacation. Bye bye. Take care.